Jenny, come and sit down with you. Oh, should you have a nice cuddle? I think really it was watching Jenny growing up, and she was, growing up into an adult, a young lady. And I was really thinking about what would be best for her future, not just now, but long term. And her behaviour was starting to indicate to us that she wanted some independence. And although she doesn't understand the concept of independence, maybe like you and I would, about living on our own or living in our own homes, I felt some of her behaviour was indicating that, like a typical teenager would be, wanting some independence. And who wants to be with their parents for the rest of their lives, really?
Myself and another colleague, Sarah Heaton, went along and had an informal chat, talking about what Jenny could maybe do in the future. And during that meeting, we talked about Jenny having her own place. I think Susie had sort of thought about it, but at that point, that seemed like a very distant thing. But in the meeting, we sort of decided that could be something that we could do.
You're doing good staring, Jen. Like the picture? Thank you. And then add the egg.
Well, the first stage of it was actually making the decision, and that was the difficult part for me, because it was me sort of saying, okay, I've got to start letting go of Jenny. I've got to start helping her towards her own independence in a way that's going to work for her. So making that decision was really tough. I couldn't even talk about it other than to my husband for weeks, because it was a really emotional time. The other big driving factor for me was what happens to Jenny when I'm not here. And I've got to plan for that, hard as that might be. That's got to be a really big consideration.
So in recruiting the staff for Jenny's team, we involved Susie, Jenny's mother, throughout the recruitment process. She was involved in devising job descriptions, being involved in all the interviews, from the group interview, the panel interview, and then we involved Jenny in the final interview, because obviously she's the person that the people are going to be with all the time. She needed to be happy to spend time with them people, and we needed to know that they would support her in the best way.
In this situation, the local authority have given us Jenny's money, like a large direct payment, or an individual budget, and we're using that to commission independent options to provide Jenny's care.
With individual budgets, people should be able to use them a lot more creatively now to meet the children's needs in the best way that will meet their needs.
Is that a nice cake?
And this has worked really well with Jenny, and she's able to have a life that, a lot of young people with a disability or without a disability would aspire to have.
Well, when Jenny first moved into the flat, it was a very, very gradual process. It was a very well-managed sort of transition, and I actually moved in with Jenny for the first couple of weeks, and then her staff team gradually started to come and work alongside me, and then gradually they started staying more with Jenny, and I started to back off and come home at nights and things like that. So for the first few weeks it was very intense, and I think I probably needed to do it that way for myself as part of that letting go process, but it was also to make sure that Jenny was as happy and settled as she could be. From my point of view, it's been really nice to see her independence and her developing her relationships with her staff team and having fun, because some of her staff team are only a couple of years older than she is, so she's doing things like she would be with her friends or big sisters if she had them.
Jenny is definitely growing into her own person. Her style of clothing has changed even, just from moving away from living with her mum. She's much more involved in doing things around her own flat, which she wouldn't have done whilst living with her mum, and doing things like baking, cooking, activities that she goes along and does with her support team. And we're hoping to find some voluntary work that will be suitable for her in the future and that will stimulate her more.
Sometimes we make decisions as parents for our children that are often better for us and not necessarily always the right thing for our children, and that's understandable. I've done that loads with both of my children, but in this situation I was having to make some really difficult decisions about Jenny leaving home and living on her own, and that was a really difficult decision to make, but it was the right decision to make for her. I can see Jenny in her own home. She's really happy. She's got a great staff team around her, and long may that continue, really, whether I'm here or not.
Red bear, yes.
Yes, it is.
We've been driven really by Alistair's own desires because he wanted a job. He wanted to, well, he really always wanted to work in a cafe. That was his aim. And I suppose, to be absolutely honest with you, we never thought that work Alistair would ever be in paid employment.